Hello everyone, my name's Chris. I am the Head of Agile Transformation at ING Australia, and what that means is I report into Global Head of One Way of Working in Amsterdam, and then locally into our COO. And at ING Australia, we're going through a journey of revisiting our Agile model and trying to expand that across the organisation. I've been at ING for about 2 years. Prior to that, I was a good old management consultant at PricewaterhouseCoopers down the road for about 10 years. I was never that big into Agile. Like, we'd started to touch on Agile just before I left ING. I think the partners saw the money gravy train that it was starting to bring forth. But the majority of my time, especially over the last 5 years, was working in organisations, just helping like lean, organisational design, how can we get better. And a lot of that work was done risk reward. So you don't have to pay us fees unless we deliver you the benefit that we're going to do. So working in that environment really sharpened my skills as a practitioner, as my skills as a consultant, and really made you trust your own ability that you could deliver, and really grew and drove my true passion and real purpose for helping business improve. Now, I think a lot of people in this room probably have a lot more experience and background in Agile than mine. So we've got in this room who are Agile coaches and Scrum Masters and product managers. Yeah, so a lot of people like you will have, like, if we sat down and debated the ins and outs of Agile, you'd most likely, I'd bow down and you guys would beat me. But what my role is to implement the new design, the behaviours and mindsets, and the new way of working. So what I'm proposing to do today is to walk through a bit of the history of ING, because as many have heard about the ING transformation, the ING way of working. Yep. Obviously, ING was the first financial services company to globally move to that model. I'll talk about the why, the history of Australia, and then go into the delivery frameworks we use across not only our technology delivery, but also our sales and service business, as well as support, and then talk about how that connects into our overall, the mindsets behind what we do. But first of all, I was going to ask a question. I was going to ask two questions. So the first one was about ING, not ING as a customer. So for those who don't know ING as a customer, if you don't have a little orange card in your pocket, like where's mine, like one of these little beauties, what are some of the things you know about ING Australia or ING globally? Has anyone got any things that they know about ING? It could be Isle of Fisher, could be anything what?
No physical stores?
Yep, no branch presence. Yeah, absolutely, no branch presence. Is anyone here an ING customer? Is anyone an ING? So, look at that, tell me some of the things that, like, what you know about ING as being a customer. Does anyone want to offer anything they know? No ATM fees, yep. That's a really good one, no ATM fees. Anything else? Same as international transactions, yep. ING Direct went to ING.com, yep. So we made that transition from the direct model to more the ING just bank. No.
Awesome.
Pardon, they're awesome? Yeah. So obviously we're, I think, the latest rate, we're number 6 in terms of most trusted brands in Australia. The ATM fees is a really interesting one, because obviously that was an ING draw card for a long time, and it was our standalone, it was our market differentiator, especially from the Big Four. And then what happened was that the rest of the Big Four matched that. So everyone else who banks with the Big Four would realise and appreciate that they now charge no ATM fees as well. And so what happened then was as an organisation, we sat there and went, okay, how do we now differentiate ourselves in the market? And what do we do differently to still hold? Then why do people want to bank with ING? All those people who came to bank with us because they said, we've got no ATM, what do we do now? And what we introduced was the global fees. And I'll tell you the story now about global fees, because it's a great example. It wasn't an example of saying, what's our delivery framework? How do we organise? What's our mindset? It was just something we had to do. And that was in 6 weeks. We were, with coordination with our vendors, all the people we deal with, we were able to go to market and offer no transaction fees for global purchases. And now what do you get every month? At the end of the month, a statement to say, this is how much money I saved. And does that work out? Are you surprised when you see that? Yeah. But were you surprised at how much it was? Yeah. And it's a fascinating one when I go to it's a barbecue or a dinner party now, that people say to me, wow, and that was just 6 weeks we were able to do that. So 6 weeks from finding out that the Big Four were going to match us in terms of no ATM fees, that we were able to go to market with our global cards offering to differentiate ourselves again. And in those environments, you can't wait to go, what's our Scrum Master going to tell us? What's our Agile coach going to do? What's our delivery mindset? How do we have to behave? It has to be embedded. It has to be part of the culture. What I wanted to talk about was a bit about the strategy and evolution behind the ING brand, which then goes to culture and mindset and the why we did the transformation, and then talk into the delivery, the frameworks we're using. So obviously ING globally was this big Dutch behemoth, and it was formed out of, in the 1990s or 1981, they changed the laws that said banks in Amsterdam can now merge with insurance companies. So they merged together to give us International Netherlands Group, which was this big behemoth. And so that big behemoth started to look at what they could do, and they started to look at, let's develop this direct banking business model. So they already started to experiment with these small experiments. So it was about, okay, we've got a value proposition which is based around customer experience, simplicity and transparency, low cost model, fleet of companies. And so one of those fleets of companies was to say, all right, let's start experimenting, which is what we call ING Direct. And by design, they kept it separate from the retail business. And then what that ING Direct model was, they started to go to 11 countries. And they said, okay, let's go experiment, learn, drive this. This was before Agile One Way of Working. This is before, but they said, let's experiment, we'll go to all these different countries. So started to go to all these different countries and build the ING Direct model. Each one learn from those, and look what we're doing. You obviously see here, 2007, Japan, we got our banking license, we went down that approach, and then that Japanese business was aborted. Anyone want to guess why the Japanese business was aborted? 2007, GFC, yep. So we're going through that process. We said, let's experiment, we'll go to all these countries, and we got the Japanese banking license and it was exported. But overall, the ING Direct model, up until that point, was vastly successful. Hit profit targets before we needed to, customer growth beyond expectations, and it was all through this small experiments, learning from each country. And that's what we still do today. It's a great advantage from my experience in the big banks versus my experience at ING Australia. We have got all these models that you can learn from. How's the one way of working transformation going in Italy? What's happening in Germany? What's happening in Spain? How are we approaching it in Canada, Italy, etc.? So that's a bit about the so that's the direct model. So that was the direct model, high savings, no branches, direct to customers, all online. So that idea of the first fintech. Really successful, balance through the roof, lots of assets, but all these assets, but all these deposits online, because who remember those ING ads when they first came on, invest in ING, high interest rates, 4%, etc., etc. What obviously happened was across all these countries were doing that, all these assets are growing, we've got nowhere to put that money. And so where do they look to put that money? Mortgage-backed securities in the US. So obviously that led to a bit of trouble. So we've got all these funds, they're getting invested in mortgage-backed securities. Bang, this nice model of this really good model of profits, as we expanded, all of a sudden, $965 billion euro loss. So at that point, I think the regulator said we have to revisit our model, and the model, ING model, direct model of just saying invest with us, no mortgages, no other products, wasn't going to work. So that's when the evolution of ING Direct Australia into ING Australia began, which is very similar to the other countries. So basically that was a move away from my secondary bank to this sort of transformation stage, which is Australia's favourite place to money, to now our current strategy, which is about empowering people to stay ahead and really chasing that primary bank relationship. I do this, it sort of tries to demonstrate, a bit about the background, the mindset, the way the organisation works. But until we are today, which is this idea of empowering people to stay ahead for the last sort of 3 or 4 years, which is really where the one way of working transformation has kicked in. And this is just a recap quickly of our sort of 2008 results, which sort of goes to sort of a lot of the mindset. So profit up, 15% year on year profit growth, added more than 400,000 new banks to the customers, added more than 500 new Orange everyday payment accounts, so that's your everyday transactional accounts. Primary bank growth, total customers over 2 million, launched new products, grew savings, grew loans, grew business, grew wholesale, and then importantly, maintained status as Australia's most recommended bank. We sit at an NPS of about about plus 36, when I think all the big four are below zero. So it's a really big advantage for us. There were some of the headlines we got. We had I don't think the big four unfortunately don't get those sort of comments about those customers. Again, I'm just sharing this a bit of pre and background information. So why one way of working in sort of globally and then again in Australia? Globally, it was a completely different story. So in 2012, the Dutch bank is this big behemoth. It's with ABN AMRO. It's a big player in Amsterdam. It's this slow-moving big beast, similar to Telstra or Telecom back 20 years ago, or the worst of state government. So we're this big behemoth. We weren't And so they said that we need to change as a bank. They've had that big loss. They said we need to change and get better the way we handle our domestic bank. So what they did is that all the executives, they went out to Spotify and they said, okay, they went out to Spotify in Sweden and said, what's this new way of working? This is 2012. How are they approaching that? And they walked around the floor, and the story goes, they went around there and they said, excuse me, sir, what are you up to today? And they're all in their suits, their pinstripe suits, all these very tall, straight-talking Dutchmen and women. And they said, what are you up to today? What's your story? What are you working on? What are you working on today? It depends. Who do you report into? It depends. What's your priorities for next month, for the next quarter, for the next year? It depends. And they flew back on their plane and they said, we need it. What's happening here? How are they doing this so quickly? How are they getting so? And that's when the original idea for us converting, or ING converting, to the idea of Agile and Agile one way of working started. Obviously, the idea in Australia is a lot different. And it's something that we struggle with in terms of when we have those conversations with our Dutch peers, or when I'm on the phone talking to Germany or talking to France about the way we're going about our transformation. They say we're ready, that really strong brand. They would die to have the sort of customer ratings and the customer experience scores we do. So it's a really different vibe. And so for Australia, it's all about fitting to our new strategy. As we move away from purely a savings bank, purely a mortgage bank, to now having more diversified products, we need a different strategy and a different structure to support that. So we need to have tribes organised around our specific customer needs, as opposed to tribes organised around work groupings. So that's really the sort of the next, and so they're quite different, but they're obviously overall the same. And then overall, so the overarching strategy of ING globally is to have that sort of one platform business, one way, one process, one way of working. So getting that, so if you get up and you're a part of the mortgages tribe in Turkey or Italy or France, and you came to Australia and you could work, it would be the same type of experience. I'll quickly I won't go through all this, I'll go through the guiding principles later, but sort of the areas of focus: customer experience. We want to be able to adapt to changing customer needs and feedback really quickly. So that doesn't work if you're sitting there going, okay, I'm in a products tribe, or I'm in a automation tribe that's doing work on a backlog and just unsexy stuff in terms of compliance and regulation. You need to know what the specific tribe purpose you're at. We only deliver quality products and services that add value to our customers. So again, it's not about speed. It's a deliberate ploy not to have speed written in there. It's not about speed to market, it's about quality products to market. Areas of focus: people and teams. We'll give responsibility to our people and teams to deliver for our customers and really give them responsibility, not just quasi-responsibility. And then this last one, we really understand how each of us contribute to the overall vision and purpose. So that's a really important one. A lot of the times I'm an engineer in a certain tribe, or I'm in a call center and I'm an operations officer. Our customer, like staff engagement feedback 5 or 6 years ago was a bit weak in those types of areas. So the executive really wanted to sharpen that so everyone had a real clear purpose of what they're about. And this idea of continuous improvement, we will improve through experiments and learn and evolve through them. That idea of, I think for a long time we were this small, really nimble bank and we just got stuff done. So we said, okay, we need to get a product to market, or we've had a small issue with this mortgage product, or we need to remediate this, or we want to launch this. We just got stuff done. We didn't learn from it to get better the next time. So really a focus on learning and getting better. And this last one, this idea of craftsmanship, really to be able to focus on building our skills and expertise and truly mean it. Not only interested in getting the job done, but getting better at what we do. And so that's why we put this huge emphasis on craftsmanship. I know when we talk later about chapter leads, etc., that's a term lots of you will be familiar with, but really, really, really putting the emphasis on chapter lead and reinforcing what an important role it is in the organisation. We've got our guiding principles and our behaviours. I'll go through the guiding principles later. I'll go through and talk quickly about, I really like this slide, and I talked about Rob once when I first met Rob. It's like, I suppose any Agile coaches in the room or Scrum Masters, when you've sat down with a skeptical C-suite, the CFO, the CEO who doesn't really get Agile, and you say, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're working now, this is the 8 principles, and you can almost see their eyes rolling into the back of the head going, what's this fluffy BS, this is not going to work. Does anyone ever had that experience when you've done it and you've said that? And I think the easiest way that I try to do it is really break it down and say, what are the commercial outcomes for those individuals that I'm looking for these things? So we work in high-performing teams, we empower teams. We care about talent and craftsmanship. I'll give you an example, like some really easy ones, like say for a mortgage assessor or a call center operator, it's like we really care about who has an approval, who who has an approval rate of 0.65 applications an hour versus who has an application rate of 0.34. And we're not saying just get faster, Billy, get faster, but we really care about getting Billy to be better at his job. We really care about, hang on, what does Bob do different to Billy such that Bob got so much better than Billy? And that goes to the call center, that goes to the operations, that goes for engineers, and really, really caring about craftsmanship and demonstrating to a CFO or a CEO, if I move the curve from 0.34 to 0.64, that translates to X many dollars, et cetera, et cetera. Explain it to them in a simple way around call center operators or whatever the simple environment is in your office, and that really gets them traction. They go, okay, that means dollars. And you go, that's the same for engineers. Some engineers are 0.65 and some engineers are 0.34. We need to focus on how do we get those 0.34 engineers up to 0.65. So that's what, because when we first say we care about talent and craftsmanship, that is, the eyes start rolling. We are consistent in our organisational design and ways of working. Why does this squad have a Scrum Master when that one doesn't? Why do we have 3 layers of management in a sales team versus an inbound call team when we don't? Why does that make sense? Provide me the rationale for why that happens and we'll go for it. Otherwise it's not, and we can turn that into dollars. We reuse instead of re-earn. We organise for simplicity. We set priorities with the big picture in mind, So there are our sort of 8 core principles that we sort of take into design, and we really challenge ourselves every time we sit down and say, especially around design, and how we collaborate and organise, are we following these principles? All right, I'm going to go through some now quite dry slides, which is sort of the hard and heavy stuff, and it sort of goes through a question. So we'll go through quite quickly. If you've got any questions, sort of ideas, but this is sort of the real nuts and bolts of how we go about organising our design. It was funny, where's Rob? Is Rob around? Rob said to me, Chris, do you want to spend on delivery frameworks? And I was like, what are delivery frameworks? And they go, teams. So this is organisational design architects. So work areas, collaborate teams, archetypes. So very serious language. So first off, we break the business into 4 sort of quadrants. So delivery, anyone who's involved in getting concepts to market. So that can be from an IT perspective, tech perspective, marketing perspective, business perspective, etc. Sales, anyone involved in selling our products. Service, questions and issues are handled by people in service area who are also mainly working in real time but are mostly centralised. So obviously here are our call centre and operations. So teams either do real-time processing or non-real time. So real-time processing is, I've got a query that can be answered in 60 seconds. Non-real time is, hey, I saw this charge on my account. What is it? Okay, let's take the details down. Let's go investigate. So that's non-real time. So our service teams and then support. So our colleagues in risk, finance, HR and other support functions apply their skills and expertise to help our colleagues do their jobs more consistently, efficiently and in the right way. So our support functions. So that's where we look at the 4 types of, there are 4 parts of the organisation. Cool. How we collaborate. We distinguish 3 types of collaborative teams. So obviously we have squads. So squads is what we know, those usually associated with concepts and markets. We look at our customer loyalty teams. So call agents, ops experts, sales members, usually in our sales and service, and obviously expert teams. So enterprise architects, HR consultants, data scientists. You get an insight into the Dutch mindset when you see random examples. That's just that's the way the Dutch look at things, just so they know it's not pre-thought. But there's sort of 3 types of teams. So we look at expert teams, customer loyalty teams, and obviously squads. So we generally sit in one of the 3 natural homes. So we have tribes, and so obviously the tribes with squads, chapters, etc. Then we have what we call circles, which are usually, so we have a mortgage circle, a daily banking circle with customer loyalty teams embedded into those. The circles is really quite interesting because I think this is actually something quite really interesting that ING is doing, and it's differentiated. And then we obviously have our centres of expertise, expert teams sitting in their different functions. So if this was HR, we'd have our sort of HR, your traditional HR business partners, and then here this might be the risk and reward and remuneration team, etc. Who has trouble with their support functions in their model, their one way of their agile working model with their support functions?
They just don't fit in.
Don't fit in? Yeah. So don't fit in. What's the type of queries and questions people get with their support functions, or what's it like for the agile coaches, the Scrum Masters, so HR, what's the type of things generally feedback you get? What is agile? Okay, can you help us with this? Okay, I'll get back to you in 6 weeks, those types of things. So we try to address that at ING, and we're lucky because we are a smaller organisation, we're nimble by nature, people know each other's names, etc. 2 things, clearly define roles and responsibilities, especially between tribes and support functions. And then when that's clearly defined, what is it for BAU and what is it for project work? And once we've got that pattern in, so once you've got the processes clear and the roles clear, what are then the capability uplift I either need in my second line functions or in my tribes, or what is the extra capacity we need? And a lot of ours was we needed extra capacity, especially in our certain risk functions. Okay, so we have predefined taxonomy to describe the one agile way of organizational design elements. So we have tribes, squads, chapters. So in terms of comfortability around tribes and squads and chapters, I know we've probably got a different, but if hands up, we're pretty comfortable with that model? Yep. So we're pretty up, yep. And then circles, super circles, circles, and customer loyalty teams. So an example like that, we have a super circle for mortgages, and in that we have a lead to cash mortgage circle and a customer in life mortgage circle. And within those customer loyalty teams, and those customer loyalty teams will be built around maybe different types of applications, and obviously a centre of expertise with expert teams. Cool. So you can get, like we said before, you can mess up these combinations. So certain teams will have squads, will have different expert teams embedded into it. So let's go, like in our sort of information type, data type tribe, we'll have an expert team embedded in that who look after data governance, things like that nature. Digital, we'll have some types of our digital tribe, we'll have expert teams in there. Expert teams are just those scarce resources that we can't fully embed into the tribes. So our UX designers are actually an expert team at the moment. Cool. Customer loyalty teams, again, expert teams. This expert team here might be around, think about a call center model or operations model. They might be about a planning resource, someone who does the planning, workforce planning, process improvement, could be an expert team, etc. So these are our design principles. So we'll go through, obviously, the key positions in the tribe. So again, I think by the show of hands, we're all quite sort of familiar with this stuff. So the tribe lead, what we call the IT area lead, agile coaches, different types of chapters, squad roles. Interesting part here that I'll go through in terms of how we refer to different things. So the idea of the product owner being a role. So a role is something that we in ING call a hat. It's a hat you wear. So it's not a full-time role, but it's a hat that you wear to do. You'll also notice that there's no Scrum Masters up there. Any questions on that model that strikes people off the top end? This is the key positions in the tribe. We used to have Scrum Masters, and that's a maturity thing. And it was like, so we said, okay, and now the Scrum Master again is something that we say that's a hat that someone can wear to do that, but it's otherwise, yeah, agile coach only. All right, design principles for the tribe. So here, tribe is a collective of squads organised around a relatively stable purpose, product or service for a longer period of time. You know, so we want our squads to stay there hopefully for 18 months. We struggle with that within Australia. We're a small bank. We get different priorities. We have to move squads occasionally a bit quicker than that. Tribe leadership consists of tribe lead and IT area leads we've spoken about. Tribes can have a global scope with respect to its purpose, can be organised cross-border. Yeah, that's sort of like different banks as part of doing that global strategy, like our Belgium and Netherlands bank are now one. So there's different things there. Tribe size between 50 and 125. FT 4 and 12 squads keep teams focused, sufficient allowed. Yep, tribes are concentrated in a maximum of 3 locations. Yep, so 2 in Australia. Tribe is defined as the highest unit with a single purpose, which end-to-end responsible. The what is managed through the tribe. No steering committees, project meetings, sounding boards, or other managerial groups. Just the QBR process. Collaboration, reduce complexity, minimise. Yep, so that's it. I'll move through quite quickly through these. Circles and customer loyalty teams. So anyone got any interest in the circles and customer loyalty team side of things? Yeah, in the operations and sales and so. Yeah, so again, this is what I really like. I came from a world where you had in operations and sales and service, you had your team leader. Team leader looked after 10 to 12 people and they set the direction and they were empowered. They said, Billy Bob, why are you at 2 applications a day when you're there? Why is your call rate like this, etc. But ING really turns it on its head and said, no, this idea of a customer loyalty team, so it's again an end-to-end team. So if you imagine what previously used to happen, it's just that whole idea of end-to-end team. So previously you'd ring up the call centre and say, there's a weird charge on my card that I don't know where it came from. The call centre would sit there, they'd log it into the system, send an email to operations who is in a different location, who would then pick up that email a day and a half later, investigate it, send an email back to someone they didn't know in the call centre and say, you didn't ask customer X for this. And we said, no, that's not the way we do. Form end-to-end teams where those people working on our key processes sit in one team. So the customer loyalty team, even if it's cross locations, so it's still okay that they report into operations, they report into the contact centre, but they're one team. And so it's that whole idea of that old school of process lean, process management of one specific team. And then these teams come really self-empowered. So we say, you now are in control of what you do and how you do it. So for our mortgage processing teams, they'll sit there and say, instead of it being, you're doing 10 applications today, you're doing 10 applications today, you're doing 10 applications today. Guys, you need to do 30 applications. How are you going to do it? Well, we know we have training today that we want to do. We want to do cross-skilling in this part, so we're going to do 25, 5, and you guys are going to do off in training. And they decide that for themselves. And we've also drastically increased the ratios of those frontline leaders to staff members. So traditionally, that 12 to 1, 14 to 1 ratio, where we're now sort of in the 20 to 30 range. And that's through empowered teams. And the level of engagement in these teams that do it right is just through the roof now. So some of our highest sort of level teams. There's been massive amounts of, there's been lots of issues and mistakes in terms of, but you have to trust those to truly empower them to do it. So our call center, wasn't Australia, but our call center was saying, okay, 7 to 9, we've got 16 call center operations doing process X, mortgage variations, I can't remember what it was. You guys get to decide when you have lunch, when you schedule, etc. Someone, they came and looked at they all took dinner together at the same time. So 16 staff all took dinner between 6 and 6:30 together. Call rates plummet, scores through the roof, and it was but it was instead of bang, 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 what did we, obviously that old mindsets and behaviours, it wasn't what did we do wrong, it was how can we learn from this? Okay, what do we need to do differently? 16 of us all can't go down to the meal room downstairs and have dinner together, so how are we going to do that differently? And that's something we really try to do, and I've been so shocked at the results, both in terms of just the pure, just that anyone got a background in process, lean, etc., that whole instead of just handing off things, that just made things so much faster. And then by truly empowering people to solve these issues and sitting there going, you now have a retrospective once a week with structured problem solving, it's just, our performance has gone through the roof on that. Cool, design principles for COE. So this is centre of expertise. So this is what I talked about before. This is the HR function with HR BPs, might be the recruitment team, the report, and they're set up like this. Again, like we talked about before, support is a challenge, but it's basically those two things. What are your roles and responsibilities, and how are you equipping yourself to be a part of the organisational cadence? So how do you know that you're going to be a part of the organisational cadence? And then 2, how are you going to be speaking the same language as the rest of the business? That's what those 3 things, I'm happy. So if they know what's a tribe, what's this, what's that, I'm happy if they're talking about the same language, they're involved in the organisational cadence, and they have a clear understanding of the roles and responsibilities for them and the tribe. Spans and layers in one way of working. Okay, it sort of talks about layers. So again, the environment this is released in is obviously an environment where in Europe it's very cost conscious, and we're in Australia, we're in an incredibly different environment where ING would luckily be growing extremely fast, which is those pictures. So when we introduced this, it was never about headcount reduction. So it's obviously a different environment to a lot of my colleagues in Europe, which is about removing headcount. So we were very lucky like that. Yeah, span of controls for manager of employees, minimum of 8 for delivery, IT and non-IT. So that's things like the chapter leads. So we want to have a ratio of 8 to 12 for our chapter leads. Again, with some of those areas we're a little bit smaller in Australia. This is the interesting one. Minimum 20 and maximum 50 for service. So we don't get up to sort of the 50, but in some of our global service centres in places like Manila, etc., they get up to 50. But we're really trying to push above 20 and really empower those frontline teams. Managers of control is less than 8. We try to double hat, so you have an extra team, so you might look after a team, an expert team, etc. I'll go through this one sort of quickly. So positions in ING language is my job. I've got a position, my title says I am this. An option or role is a hat. This is a task that I perform for my squad. So obviously customer journey expert, I'll talk about that in a second. UX designer, dev engineer, ops engineer, feature engineer, data analyst, data architect, IT chapter lead, IT area lead, IT lead, tribe lead. IT lead is one we haven't seen yet. That's just a span breaker between CIO and IT area leads in some countries, which we have in Australia. Optional role and hat, product owner, Scrum Master, process leader, central product owner, Scrum Master, etc., etc. Specialization, domain architects, P&L owner, cool. Description as functions. Okay, this is customer journey expert. So if you're in a concept to market tribe within ING and you're not from a tech background, you are a customer journey expert. And a customer journey expert can be anyone from marketing to CI to a product manager to the traditional BA business analyst, and they're all called customer journey expert. So they're all called customer journey expert, but they can be in a chapter that is about CI, it's about marketing, but they can also wear the hat of product owner and things like that. UX designer, DevOps engineer. DevOps, yeah, is like I said, it's in a small location like Australia, when is something we can struggle with in terms of embedding in all squads. And that, of course, raises issues of prioritisation of backlogs when you have to wait for your DevOps engineers. Responsible for the development of the craftsmanship. So again, craftsmanship is one of those sort of fluffy words, but it gets a lot of, how do we get better at what we do? Plus they're also the traditional line manager. I'm not sure if anyone else has had the experience when they've been in an environment where they've appointed chapter leads and what's happened. Has anyone been in an environment where they've gone through an organisation and said, okay, we're going to appoint chapter leads, and what some of the issues that happen there? So chapter lead traditionally have come from a world where they were the traditional manager. They set the what and the how of what we do. So I'd say you're allowed to go have a leave. I tell you what we're working on today, and then I don't do much myself. At ING, we split out those responsibilities such that the people responsibilities retained in the chapter lead, and then the doing of the what sits with the product owner. So that created an issue where these chapter leads go, they wanted to be the traditional manager, and then they weren't. They only had that sort of people responsibilities, and they really struggled with it. And after a time, they said, this isn't actually a role that I wanted to do. I want to be the product owner that sits there and sits the what for the tribe. What are we working on? What's our priority? Talking to the chapter tribe lead about what we do and how we turn that vision for the quarter into what we do, as opposed to sitting there going, how do I make Charlie, how do I make Mary, how do I make Bob better at what they do, and work out what they do next? Because they're obviously two different skill sets and two different types of personalities. So it's a big, one of the challenges we've overcome. We haven't talked, obviously we're here at Epic, and we haven't even talked about what an Agile coach does. So what do we expect of our Agile coaches? Does any Agile coaches in the room want to say what they see there, and we'll see how much it lines up to the ING vision? What's the role of an Agile coach? Yep, optimise system and people, yep. Yeah, so what do we call it at ING? Build high-performing teams through individuals and coaching. We really, the term we obviously use is really to drive the process. So we've got this process and the system, and how do we drive that to get the benefit of what we want? What's failing, what's not failing? This is not just a fluffy role where you sit there and go, oh, we had some great retros, we have these nice pictures on the board. It's how you're driving performance of that team. Why is that squad X and Y not performing when squads X and Y are? And they have to be accountable for that and work with the tribe leads to turn around performance. It's a permanent function, obviously. Yeah, scope of 4 to 7. We have a bit lesser in Australia. So, agile mindset, developing it. Obviously, developing that agile mindset. Who's harder, leaders or team members? What do we think about developing that agile mindset in leaders or team members? Anyone? Leaders? Show of hand for leaders. So it's a sweep. So it's obviously a sweep of the room for leaders. So a lot more difficult in leaders. And the story that my functional boss, who's a little Iranian guy, he talks about is like, the way he talks about it is, previously what we wanted our leaders, they were shepherds. They were shepherds in the field with sheep, and they walked around and would go, sheep, don't eat that grass. Walk over here, sheep. Go over here, go over here. Drink this water, not out of that well. Drink over here, sheep, time to go over here. Stay away from those dogs. Sheep, sheep, sheep. And he goes, that's what our leaders traditionally were. They were shepherds. They were pushing the sheep around the paddocks and doing that. What we wanted to change them was to beekeepers. And what do beekeepers do? They come at the end of the day, they pull out the drawer, whoop, there's honey. The bees are good at making honey, let's leave the bees to make honey, and we'll only act as the remover of impediments. What, there's no honey today? What are we going to do about that? And that's a simple way that he talks about building that right mindset in terms of what we want from our traditional managers versus what we want in an agile culture. And that shepherds to beekeepers one is a really good story, I find. The other thing we found was in a lot of the countries where they did this for headcount reduction purposes, they went through this really rigorous process set up by HR functions that said, who's got the agile mindset? Who has it? Who doesn't? And I was just, yeah, do you have it? Do you have it? And then they found that the people who left, they went to these organizations and they flourished. We thought they didn't, but it wasn't because they didn't have the agile mindset, they just didn't know. So lots of people can develop it, and it wasn't up to any great HR process, recruitment process to identify it, but it just took a while, a bit longer for some individuals to come out. So that's been another big learning. The journey to become an agile organisation starts with the mindset in an agile environment. We ask different behaviour and mindset from our people at all levels of the organisation. People have to learn new behaviour and also unlearn old behaviours. From experience, we know this is really difficult, but it is possible. Yeah, my biggest learnings from this are leaders are harder. It's amazing what you do when you sort of empower those more low-level employees to do it. Like, I've been shocked and amazed, and you often miss with them. I made assumptions about what would their drivers be, and what was going to drive them to be better. Like, they are actually passionate about being better at their roles, where I would go, oh, they're not interested. They're only doing. So I missed that opportunity. Before I joined ING, like I said, I was a consultant. I was working with Western Power, who's the utility in Western Australia that does the electricity network, government owned. And my mistake, we're driving a mindset and behaviours change program, and the mistake that I made that I didn't realise until about 4 weeks in of a 12-week engagement where I was getting paid risk reward was to say, these guys were actually cared about doing good maintenance on the poles and having this great network. I just didn't think they would have the passion for it. After all these time working in financial services, these guys were passionate and you didn't pick up on it. So that's been a couple of my big learnings, that one, leaders are harder, and if you really empower those entry-level employees, it's amazing what they can do. Okay, so this sort of talks about sort of the people, this is a combination of both the people and the sort of, this is an older slide, but about both the people aspects and the sort of change journey we go. So we do this create awareness and inspire phase. So courtesy visit, that's such Dutch terminology. We're so grateful that they come to see us. We go to a boot camp, we management intake, impact analysis, what are we trying to achieve? And this is all about creating awareness and inspire, more at the senior levels of the organisation. So what do we mean? What are we trying to achieve? And we do this, we've gone from delivery to sales and service. We then go through, okay, then what do we actually need to do with that design phase? So what does our new organisation look like? What are we trying to achieve? What are our strategic vision? What are we trying to get to? What's the design going to be what's the design that's going to enable that to happen? And I think most of them will go up to 40 to 50 versions. Explore to validate, that's preparing for implementation, what do we need to do, and then onboarding and kickoff and continuous improvement. Select and assign, that's it. How do we appoint people to these roles? Do we go there and just say, you are now a tribe lead, you are now a chapter lead, you are now this, you are now that, or do we appoint people for the roles and how do we do that? You're obviously weighing up sort of that spectrum of the perfect candidate versus getting the business disruption. Because you imagine any business that we've ever worked in that says 3 months, you're not going to know what your role is, but you're going to have to sit here and wait patiently. That obviously causes the business disruption. They start to look elsewhere. So people's side have changed. Like obviously a lot of people in the room would have seen stuff like this before, but it's about really that why. Why are we doing this? And for us, it was just simple. Like strategy 101 today and you have to be organised around the customer. We weren't organised around the customer because we'd outgrown that model. So we had to be organised around the customer to move faster and react to what they're. So really establish the why. This is going to enable this to happen. For our engineers were excited about it because they got to work on the same assets continually and not jump around assets. The business people liked it because they got to get some really some control and some destination over our tech stuff. The desire, this is going to help us do this. So for engineers, you're going to get to work on the same assets all the time. You're not going to be jumping from asset to asset. You're going to get to control that asset. You're going to get to say who does what to it. You're going to get to approve it. The knowledge, this is what it means to be a chapter lead. This is what you're going to be doing. This is how the tribe's going to work. This is the QBR process. Given the ability, what we did too is split our training over different parts. So the role-specific training. So if I'm going to be a tribe lead, a chapter lead, we split up that training to say some of it occurs prior to your job, some of it happens after. So they've got a bit of experience in that job before they actually do some more training. And then reinforcement. Again and again and again. This is why we're doing it. This is the desire. This is the knowledge. Yeah, this is the ability. Seeking continuous feedback. And leader mindset. This is some good stuff here. Like again, like we've talked about the challenges about leaders. This is sort of some like really little infographics. Like again, communicate differently, not I, but we. So it's all about we, the tribe, we. Apologise if needed. I'm sorry, so that's what we want our leaders to do, apologise. Be transparent as possible. It's none of this, it's like, you'll find, be very, extremely transparent, always be transparent. If things like, if we have reprioritisation to meet a risk or regulatory need, we're upfront about it. Yeah, sorry, you won't have that priority to build this. We'll be as transparent as possible. See all mistakes an opportunity to learn and embrace that. Yeah, when stuff goes wrong on a product release or that, let's look at it and why. And we're not just caring about getting things done. We want to continuously improve. Celebrate success on team individual, no individual heroes. Yep, very much everything's about team, even except for bonuses. Trust the team and empower them. So really, truly empower them to do it. Even if sometimes, like we all know, as leaders or agile coaches or people who support that, sometimes the level of empowerment, it's not actually real, but they get to make some small decisions, which makes a huge impact. They still have to do their 40 files a day. They still have to do this, but they have to decide how they do it. This is one that we use a lot, or variations thereof. How we get that balance between alignment and autonomy. We've got the team here. We need to cross the river. Figure out how. So it's like, yes, we need to cross the river. But it's up to you to how to do it, and really empower them to do it, and learn from mistakes. We need to service our customers. We need to build this product. You're empowered to do that. This is one we use a lot. It seems to sort of get lots of traction. Because how do we get autonomy and alignment in an agile environment? It's that we have that clear understanding. So the leader still has a role to play, but it's just not as forceful as it once was. So I know we've sort of brushed through that stuff as a leader. So it is sort of more the fluffy stuff and the tangible stuff. There's some fantastic different things that ING globally have done about how we do that in terms of guest speakers, experience days, different types of training, sort of agile training, role-specific training, mindset and behaviour training, how we build those. But yeah. Any other questions about agile mindset and behaviours? Cool. But yeah, happy to chat afterwards. Cool.